those basic, female upscale isn't enough because you want to find exactly the right target audience so you can be far more efficient with your marketing dollars. So you want to consider demographics. Again, those things that we all know: race, number of cars in the household, occupational status, married or not. Those are demographic data, and we want to know about demographic data. With our clients, we also talk about psychographic data. There's actually models out there where it breaks the entire country's population into what's called clusters, and they have cutesy little names like Stars and Stripes, or Down and Outers, or Urban Estates. And these little names are very good at psychographically telling you about the lifestyle of the patient. And what's great is you can pick your main zip codes and find out who lives there and target those people specifically. And again, the more you understand your audience, the much more likely is you're going to be successful. Geography. This is crucial. One of the things that's both a blessing and a challenge with working with local businesses is that everything is based upon geography, because you could waste so much. If you're one practice, you're a Medi-Spa in suburban Atlanta and you want to go buy TV, you're going to be wasting a lot of coverage, obviously, unless you do cable TV and some other things. You have to be careful with your geography. One of the things I recommend is go home and take a look at where are you getting your 70% of your patients, the top 70 to 80%, because that's your really good defined target audience. Now, I know some little old lady comes to you from Poughkeepsie every year. She loves you. She thinks you're the best. Unless you're in Poughkeepsie, great, that's not your audience. You understand what I mean? And most people tend to overestimate their audience. I want you to think exactly who that is. There's several ways of doing that. These days there's software out there that you can actually put in your patient base and get little pinpoints on a map. Your staff can do it, though they'll kill you, going out and taking 1,000 pins in a map. An easier way to get, which is not as accurate, but a good start, is to simply count up the number of patients you have by zip code and compare that with the population in each zip code to get a sense. Well, by the way, there are typically mental and physical barriers to your geography. There may be a major highway, a county line, a freeway, a lake, or whatever. So you have to determine that. Seasonality. Most doctors start marketing when things get slower, when the reality is you want to market during the good times. People have a natural disposition to marketing to your marketing when they're open to it. So if you want to go talk about, for example, spider vein removal in the middle of the wintertime because you want to do more spider vein removal, the problem is nobody's thinking about it. Spring, that's the time to think about it. So make sure your marketing thinks about, okay, what's appropriate for your business based upon the services you're trying to sell. The competitive environment. Again, I mentioned a little earlier, when I first started doing this, we always ask our clients, because we're good marketers, tell me about your competition. But in the old days, I didn't care. It was usually so bad, so pathetic, so non-existent that it wasn't an issue. Nowadays, there are usually, especially in your field, you guys, of all the professions we work with, are probably the most competitive. So there absolutely is competition. You need to think about how you're going to position yourself vis-a-vis your competitors. What's your strategy in order to be successful? Okay, so we've thought about our target audience. We've thought about our objectives. Now we need to think about appropriate media. So where do we start? Well, I can't teach everything I know, and we have 5 minutes and maybe a little more left. So I'm going to go pretty quickly here and share with you some pros and cons. This is a way of simplifying a very complex subject into some bite-sized nuggets. Okay, so newspapers. One of the pros is they're more negotiable, and they tend to feel better to doctors. They like going there. They also tend to be the baby steps medium. The first time a lot of doctors start advertising, they start with the newspaper. I don't know why. It just feels like the place to start. TV and radio seems so boring. The cons are it's still relatively expensive. Zoned editions are often not as great as they sound because people don't read them as much. And so there's a lot of waste. Also, newspapers absolutely skew older. The older the patient is, the more likely they are to go use the newspaper. The younger they are, the less likely they are. Like, I just literally bought, my wife was teasing me, you're a sucker. One of the kids from a local high school came by and gave me a newspaper subscription. I bought it. I know we'll unsubscribe because I get all my information from the internet constantly, 24 hours a day, and the stuff I really need to know about, I watch Charlie Rose or CNN about. So it definitely skews older. Magazines, a lot of cosmetic practices like magazines. They're very high image. I'm talking about magazines like, Atlanta Monthly or Orange Coast Magazine, those things. The problem is, it depends a lot on what kind of practice you have. If you're a plastic surgery-based practice that's looking at your Medi-Spa as a way of feeding patients, some things can make a lot more economic sense for you because you have the upside of the big cases. If you're in a Medi-Spa, traditional Medi-Spa with the soft stuff, it's going to be pretty expensive, and your chances of getting a positive ROI are really tough. So you have to think that through. Direct response off of this stuff is harder. Usually we do magazines as part of a larger marketing budget. It's not usually where we start because, silly us, we want the phone to ring. So we want to start there. And I'm not saying magazines don't work. We've done it before with magazines work great. But I'm just talking about, as a place to start, some general rules. Radio. Radio is often overlooked because it's not visual. But what's interesting is with the radio, you can paint a picture in the consumer's mind that can be terrific, sometimes better than you would ever want them to have. And you can drive them to a website for before and after. So you can take advantage of that if you do radio. Another issue, though, with radio is, as I mentioned before, waste can be a problem, and it requires a lot of repetition. It's fleeting. It's not there like a newspaper ad they can respond to. So you need lots of repetition. On the high side, it has a very low cost per exposure. In other words, the cost overall may be high, but on a per-person basis, on a per-thousand basis, it's low. It's great for rural areas. I can just carpet bomb, as I say, with a rural practice. I can hit wide areas with radio pretty easily, or if you've got multi-locations. It tends to be targeted by format and program. So, for example, the Howard Stern audience is going to be different than Rush Limbaugh. So you can target pretty well with radio. That's a nice thing. And there's also a lot of times with station and program loyalty. One of the great things in radio is, if you get one of the DJs to be your patient and she loves you, that helps. That's a more sophisticated program. Television. Television seems like it's at the peak for a lot of practitioners. There have been some various companies out there trying to do to make television easier because the production cost is the big stumbling block. Production is really expensive. And people are used to seeing ads for Mercedes and Nike and people like that. So the expectation level is very high. And if you're sure the local cable company can do your advertising for you, but then it's going to look like the local cable company did your advertising for you. You could easily end up looking like a used car salesman if you're not careful. But on the other hand, TV has a low cost per thousand. It reaches broad areas. You look credible and more important because you're on TV. There's something about that. There's two things that give you credibility. Being on TV seems to make you look like a player, and good internet presence. It's funny, like with our company, we get lots of people call us because, hey, you guys were, number 1, 2, or 3 on medical marketing. You guys know what you're doing. It's instant credibility being up there on organic search. TV can do that for you too. Cable TV is a way that you can do advertising on a more localized basis. So again, this is a huge subject. I'm trying to stay on time here. So keep in mind production quality and cost are often an issue as well as waste. I'm going to show a commercial here, hopefully, in a second that illustrates, though, that one of the things is if you do go through this whole issue with TV, you've got to repeat it, all right? You've got to go through all the energy and time to produce something. You've got to actually do it. So just for fun, I thought I'd share this.
Mom, I am so nervous.
Oh, I remember my wedding day. I had so many butterflies.
Be honest. How do I look?
Oh, honey, you look perfect.
That tattoo not working out? Let Dr. Hochman and his laser specialist get rid of it today. Call now for a free consultation.
Okay, so the point of showing this, though, is how many times do you think, if you went through all the trouble to get, this is something we professionally produced, there were 12 people on the set. It was a big deal. How many times would you run a spot like that, to give it a chance to be successful? For your practice. This particular practice ran it once on American Idol. So even though I got calls, the point is if you're going to do this at broadcast media in particular, you've got a budget not just for the production, but you've got to be willing to actually run it. And that's really critical. So especially with broadcast media, because they are fleeting. They go away in an instant. It's not like an ad that's sitting here that stays with you. Broadcast is gone. It requires repetition. All right, so shoppers. This is the bane of a lot of practices. There are people who tell me, I'll be dead before I put myself in a coupon or on a billboard. So I understand that. So it's not appropriate for everybody. I never push this stuff, but it can work really, really well from an ROI standpoint, especially when you realize that one of the things Cheryl brought up earlier that I thought was important that we talk about a lot is many spas in particular are a retail business. You're a retail business. You've got optometrists now. They're a retail business. You need to realize that. So you're not putting yourself in a coupon. You're putting a business entity in a coupon. So at any rate, one of the advantages of it is it tends to be highly targetable geographically. You can pick units of 10,000 households. That's huge, especially in an urban area. The price to get 10,000 households is usually around $400, $500. So you can take some baby steps. Creative can solve many image issues. So if you have the right creative, it can help the downscale feel. It's fast. Another thing you have to keep in mind, though, if you go down this game with offers, though they work, you've got to recognize that there's going to be a lot of people who no-show, and there's going to be people that are nuts. So you have to recognize that, I love that truth, by the way. I thought that was great. That was really so right on. So you have to recognize that you're looking at the overall return on investment, and recognize this is just a different game. It's just a different game. Yellow Pages, I just wrote an article to our newsletter subscribers. The death of Yellow Pages is, what is that Mark Twain saying? Has been, premature. The rumors of my death are premature and overstated. Yellow Pages can still work. Now, keep in mind, I know that everybody hates Yellow Pages. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a practice outside of the successful ones that liked Yellow Pages because of the way their sales tactics and so forth. But there are still a lot of practices out there reporting a lot of success. Is it as good as before? No. Is it more difficult than before? Yes. But there's still opportunities in some cases. The problem with Yellow Pages is it's expensive. And also, you're in there for 12 months. It's hard to get out. Outdoor, again, this is for very few of you. Outdoor means billboards, radio, kiosks, things like that. Most of you will never do this. But again, on a larger campaign, like right now for lap band surgery, I live in Southern California, there are people with 30, 40 billboards, and we know of them. We've talked to them. They are getting a lot of leads from that. So obviously you can't do a lot with it. There's some image issues, but you get a very low cost per exposure in a geographic area with outdoor. So it's definitely not for everybody, but it can be done. Internet advertising. My favorite area of expertise is internet advertising. Google has a huge party every year I go to called Google Dance. This is me at Google's party. Everybody else is partying. I'm talking to the engineers about what's next. So some of the pros about internet advertising, mainly pay-per-click, is it's highly targetable, again, by geography. People are looking for you. That's what's great. With Yellow Pages and the internet, they're looking for you. They're coming to you because they have a need. It tends to be younger and more upscale people. The disadvantage is it's definitely getting more competitive, and the price per click does increase in many markets because of dumb money chasing it. Everybody wants to be on the front page. The price goes up. So it's better to get in now. So once you've done your, a few minutes? Okay, I'm going quick. I'll speed up. Okay. So anyway, do your research and planning. Talk to local media. Develop relationships with the reps. I think you're going to talk later about negotiating, so I'll leave this for you. But essentially, you can negotiate with the reps and look for the best cost per 1,000. If you want to negotiate, you need to have long-term commitments. Cash speaks loudly. Talking about one ad does not. Take advantage of their slow revenue cycles. Try to negotiate for bonus spots. Sometimes you can get remnant space where if they don't have anybody else, you can get in for a fraction of the cost. If you're doing 5,000 or more, hire somebody who buys media professionally. It's worth it. Either us or somebody else, they create a plan. Make sure your creative is ready. One final thought, track electronically for web-based tracking. These days you can have call tracking numbers to see exactly what's working and what's not. You can record them. And finally, adjust based upon results. I'll leave the final slide up here. Okay, so if you have any other questions, I'll be around just for a couple minutes. There's some free resources at our website as well. Thank you.
Good job, sir. Thank you. That was wonderful.